Okay, so this is a random tutorial. I just wanted to try and make like a tutorial, just in case anybody wants it, or like someone's just searching up on their screen, how do I do this? And there's not really any specific tutorial for this kind of search term, so I just wanted to make a video so that there is. So, in this tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you how to relatively quickly, like 5, maybe 10 minutes or so, how to make a base Bambisona model. And it's relatively simple. I mean, you do need to have beginners basically understanding of Blender. Like, you need to understand where all the stuff is, you need to understand where the various items are and what you do. And I don't have that add-on that shows you what I'm pressing, so I'm going to be saying it as I do it so that y'all can understand how I'm like doing this process exactly. So what I'm going to be, so this is the model that we will be making. I am going to show you how to basically make this in Blender. Relatively short, really easy. So let's start with a new file. And there's always this default cube whenever you open the Blender file, or any new Blender file really. And what you want to do is delete that, because we're not going to be starting off with a circle, or not a circle, a cube. We're not going to be starting off with default cube. We're going to be starting off with sphere. So Shift A, or you can just go up here. Yeah, once you hover over it, it shows you the keyboard shortcut, and I like doing the keyboard shortcut. It's just a bit easier to me, it's a bit muscle memory, that kind of stuff. And we'll be starting out with sphere, and if you look at the camera in comparison, that camera object over there, this is a rather large sphere. So what we're going to do is hit S to scale. We're going to go over to this overlay. We're going to hold-click here and drag up until all of these show, so that when you delete it, they all disappear. And just scale it down. It's like, let's say let's just say 0.75 for this tutorial. I mean, scaling might come into bigger priority if we're going to bring this into something like Unity, but I'm not going to be showcasing that because I frankly am not too knowledgeable on that subject. But yeah, we just have a sphere. We're going to bring that up. So G and then hit Z so that it snaps to the Z axis. Or basically moving it up and down, if you don't know what that means. And then you have the sphere, right? You have the sphere, let's just move it up a bit more. And what we want to do is hit Shift D to duplicate that. And we're going to move this down a bit. And it looks a bit weird at this moment, but we're going to edit it so that it doesn't look that way. So if you hit Z, you can go into this material, like what viewport are we using. And with wireframe, you can be in something like front view, and you can just select them all, and it selects all of them because it shows all of the vertexes or whatever. And so what you want to do is hop back over to Blender. I should do something real quick. Sorry. You go over there, you hit X, and since you want everything below this bottom half deleted, you hit delete vertices. And this may look semi-normal, it might look like a bit like Drop Donald, if you get what I mean. You know that character, but if we go back into the solid viewport, what you'll see is that it's relatively, like it's not filled. It doesn't have solid bottom. So what you want to do is you want to select all of this, and it varies on the computer. It varies on the computer, like what kind of type or what version of Blender you're using actually, but you either double click and make sure when you're doing this, you go between the vertices and not directly on the vertices, or like this, because if you go like this, then it's like the wrong kind of loop. But double click or alt click, depending on, just test either one out, and which one works is the one that you're going to use. and then you hit F to fill it. And fill is honestly a pretty useful tool, so just remember that once, for like if you make any other models. Honestly, if you're on this tutorial, you're probably going to make a model later on besides this one. But yeah, we're gonna hit S, and we're gonna hit Z, so it only scales on the Z-axis. And we're just gonna scale it up, so it's roughly like that. I mean, you can honestly scale it up to whatever length or size that you want. It honestly depends on your character, but this is just a base model, so I will be doing this. And so, what you want to do next, you want to hit Shift A again, if you're going to add another object, and you want to hit a cylinder. This looks weird, but we haven't edited it yet, we have not edited it yet. So, S, scale that down just a bit, S, and Z again, scaling on the Z-axis. And you want, once again, it really depends how you scale this, it's going to really depend on your character, and the proportions that they have, but this is, again, base model. So, whenever I scale something, just know that this is not like... This is just a default preset that I'm using for my head, and this does not have to hard set any of your characters. And, okay, so now we have the belt, or whatever it's called. I just like to call it a belt, so it's relatively where it is. And then what you want to do, if you want to hit Shift D, like we duplicated the head so we can make the torso, we're going to duplicate this belt so we can make the leg. And what you want to do is you want to go over to this, like, wrench icon. It's the modifiers. And what you want to do is mirror modifier. And just the mirror is in the right kind of area. You want to hit this eyedropper tool. You want to drag it over to this sphere, or if you've named it torso or whatever, just drag it over to your torso object, click it, and so it'll now use like halfway, like middle down, halfway down, or halfway mark on the torso to mirror modifier. And honestly, mirror modifier saves a lot of your time. It's really helpful if you are trying to make something relatively symmetrical. Keep in mind, if you are done with the mirror modifier, or if you just don't want it there anymore, you can hit Control A or Command A if you are on a Mac, and it will get rid of the modifier and automatically just make a copy of the vertices of the object into the same object, so they'll become merged. And then you can just like edit it in edit mode, which edit mode we will get onto in a minute or so. But anyways, S. And then something helpful here is Shift-Z. So if you do S and then Z, it'll scale it down, like on the Z-axis, right? It'll make it shorter or taller. But if you hit Shift-Z, it'll scale on every axis but the Z-axis. So like if you're trying to scale something but you don't want it to become shorter, you can hit Shift-Z and that'll help. So we have this, you drag it over, and as you can see, the mirror modifier has, you know, scaled it, has made it so that there's two of them, and it cuts your work in half, basically. So remember, mirror modifier, very helpful. And we're going to hit Tab, and then we're going to go into edit mode, and we are going to, as you can see, we got these vertices. Want to double click or alt click, depending on what computer or version you have. And we're going to hit G and then Z, so we can drag this down. And this next part that I'm about to go over is completely optional, and this is just how I model the legs for my Bambisonas usually. If I'm modeling them, not if I'm drawing, but if I'm modeling them, I usually like to add this little touch. So it's like adding boots. It's like adding boots is how I'm going to summarize it. So this next part is optional. You can stick with the normal cylinder legs if you prefer. If you want to do this, you can. So I'm going to drag these up a bit more. So roughly at this area, I want to hit 3 on the number pad. So I go to the side view. 1 on the number pad will take you to the front view that we've been using so far. But 3 is the side view, what we're going to be using for this upcoming step. So I want to E to extrude. This creates a new like vertices layer, and this helps a lot, so you don't have to make like a separate object just to do the boots or whatever. I mean, you can, but it's more convenient to just extrude and then, like, hit separate. If you don't want them to be in the same object, you separate by hitting P, by the way. And anyways, back to the tutorial, you hit E to extrude, you hit Z so it snaps on the Z axis, because if you don't, it ends up being, like, off-centered. It's sort of annoying. But if you want to do what I'm going to do for this anyway, is I'm going to hit S, and then I'm going to hit Y, so it only scales on the Y axis. It may look a little weird at this point, but what I'm going to do is scale that down just a bit more, and I'm going to drag it over so it looks like that. Just gonna drag this up a bit, so GZ, and then GY if you want to move it along this grain line here. And then I'm going to hit E to extrude again. It's automatically snapped to the Z axis, but in case it doesn't, E and then Z, just remember that. And you have that. You have these little boots. I like adding those. And this guy, I'm just gonna call him Steve. I'm gonna call him Steve for now, because this is just a base, so call him Steve. He looks sort of funky without a hat. He looks a little bald, if I do say so myself. And so what we're gonna do is we're going to make a hat. And this is the same sort of process of scaling, I guess if you could call it that we did for the torso. We're going to duplicate it, so Shift D, and then click it, so click right after you duplicate it, so it doesn't move around or anything, so it's in the same place. You want to hit S and then Z, so it scales down the Z axis, and then you want to hit S and then Shift Z again. Remember what I mentioned previously, the Shift Z, so it doesn't scale on the Z axis, and we're just going to bring it up there. It might look a little funky, but if we pop out of this front view using the middle mouse, we can see that it looks like a relatively normal hat. Scale this up on the Z-axis just a bit, and we have that. We have a little, like, torso base hat for this guy. And what I'm going to do for the hands, if this gets a ton of traction, or a lot of people, or if anybody really needs me to make a part 2 of this video, then I will do that, but I don't have time to right now. I don't have time to make a part 2, but I hit let's, hold on. Okay, so, remove the mirror modifier, did a little misstep there, but, let's see, we have that, we have the head. I'm going to just make simple little spear hands for now, for this little base guy. So Shift D to duplicate. Got the mirror modifier. Once again, eyedropper tool. Click on the torso so that it does not, you know, mirror in the wrong way. You scale this down a bit because obviously we don't want the hands quite as big as the head. That would just look a little funky. And then we hit G. And honestly, you don't have to snap it to any particular axis because they can be anywhere. But you got a little hand. Simple little sphere hands for this guy. And there we go. We have a tutorial. On how to make a base Bambisona avatar in Blender. The Blender version I am using is roughly like 3.0, 3.4, not entirely sure, but I can double check. If people want me to make a part 2, then in that part 2 I will go over slightly more complicated hands, and I will go over how to make faces. So that's pretty cool. And if this gets anywhere close to a part 3, then I will go over basic rigging for moving it around for like rendered images or something if you want, and I will go over visamines or shape keys. And that is it for the tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helped. If you needed this kind of tutorial, I hope that you found it helpful, and I hope that you enjoyed it. So, adios guys. I will see you maybe for part 2.